And the reason I want to do this is I would like to make sure that everything we say here gets recorded, and I will archive the information. I want to thank all of you for attending. And we do have a chat line in the background if you need to ask questions during you can always just verbally ask a question, but if you also want to do a background chat, I'll be able to see those chats and answer questions. Also, if somebody asks a question and you know the answer to, by all means, feel free to answer their question. First, I want to recognize a couple of CSET passage people. And it looks like Valerie, you passed your CSETs. Did you pass all of them? Hello, Valerie.
Yes, I did.
You did?
Yes, I did.
Well, I think that Valerie gets 2 snaps up for that. That's wonderful. I'm so glad to hear that. Congratulations. And we have Debbie, who's my student, and she is 2 out of 3. So she only has 1 more to go. So we're all very proud of you all for doing such good work. We know how hard that happens to be. So I'm going to go ahead and, oh, I see another student has joined me, and that is that Rebecca?
Yeah.
Okay, where can I see your name on here? Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay, Rebecca Francis. And once I get into the presentation, if you come in and I'm going to take roll at the end before we leave. I do want to let the Term 1A students know that, the Term 1 students know that you do have a collaborative project at the end of this term. And Tim, you might fall into that category as well. I don't know what the 1Bs are doing, but the Term 1s, Chad's a Term 1, Sarah's a Term 1, Anna is a Term 1. So if you all need to work together on your collaborative project, know that those names are available to you and that they would be more than happy to work with you. And I think that's it.
I'm also a Term 1. Emma is also a Term 1.
Oh, Emma, yes, and Emma, excuse me, Emma, I'm sorry, I saw you and I forgot to put your name down, but I talked about you earlier. And Emma is also a Term 1. So as you approach the end of Term 1 and you have to start working on your collaborative project, that's important for you to know that these people are available to you. So if you would all mute yourselves, I'm going to put up screen share. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So the purpose of this particular session is for us to go over how to do lesson plans. Lesson planning is a skill, and everyone needs to understand the skill as it relates to our Cal State Teach lesson planning document. And since you were all also going to be observed by your faculty advisor, it's very important that you understand how to create this document so that when we come in to observe we'll know what you're teaching. For the Term 1A students, you don't even get lesson planning until Term 1B. And Term 1B students, you get lesson planning and then you have to almost immediately take a teacher performance assessment. And that's the same thing for the Term 1A students. And the one thing we know is that you need practice in doing lesson planning. So that's why I wanted to start this now so that you can get clarification and understand what it is you need to do in order to fill out this document properly. The one thing, it's the lesson planning assistant. The lesson planning assistant is the LPA. You will find it in the My Work section. You will, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Let me make it just a little larger. Okay, so what you do is you go into Create Lesson Plan, and then you title your lesson plan, whatever you're going to title it, and then you push create. The reason I'm not going to do that is because I already have a blank one, but once you do that, you then will be able to open up the link to the lesson planning assistant. I want to impress upon you that the main goal of planning to teach is that you understand where it is you want to go in the process of allowing the students the opportunity to learn, and for you to teach them what they need to understand and facilitate that learning. And everything has to be in what is called alignment. And when we talk about alignment, we're talking about the standard, the content standard. We are talking about the objectives, which are the content standard is here. The content standard, the objective for the lesson, and then we go down here to the assessment. I want you to know, once you start doing your lesson planning, I want you to fill in those 3 boxes first. When you fill in those 3 boxes, everything else you see in this document is talking about what is your plan to get to your goal. Your goal will be identified in the standard. You will then write an objective that'll be measurable so that you can know if the students are getting whatever it is you're trying to teach them. And then your assessment down here says, is the measure for mastery. What is it that you're teaching that you can see? It's observable, that you can tell if they got the meaning of the lesson. May, do you have anything else you want to add to that before I move forward in how to fill out this document? May? Push your mute button. I guess not. Okay, so let's go into the document. So here's your subject area. This is your edit. To open it up, you will click on edit, and these are the subject areas that you would pick. I'm going to pick social science because I was a social science teacher, and I'm not going to pick social science only because of the Common Core. Common Core are in math and English language arts. Those are the standards that you would use when teaching Common Core, when teaching math and English language arts. Social studies and science are both embedded. Science is embedded in the math, and social studies is embedded in language arts for Common Core. So I have to let you know that when you decide to do a math lesson, you're going to use a Common Core standard. When you do an English language arts lesson, you're going to do Common Core. When you do a science lesson, you're going to actually go to the California State Standards for Science. And when you do a social studies lesson, you're going to go to the California State Standards for Social Studies. In the very near future, like almost any day now, science will be in the Common Core. I don't think it's been accepted yet, but it will be. So eventually there will be just Common Core for science, but social studies is embedded in language arts. So in this case, let's just pick something in language arts. I'm not that strong in language arts, so y'all will have to help me out. So now we have the subject area that we're going to be working in. Right here it says goals. Don't write anything yet because you don't know what the goals are unless you've already looked at your standard. Then it says concept and skills. Don't write anything because you don't know those yet because you haven't looked at your standard. You come down here and you go immediately to your standards. So you have 2. One says written response and one says standards. If you want to write something down, you can, but the shortcut is to come to this line that says standards. You click on this. You go to the red where it says add standards. You will now be, you will open up in this box and you will see that it says California Academic Content Standards. This is where you will find social studies and you will find science. Then it says California English Language Development Standards. For those of you who are in term 1A, you will be getting to this at the end of the term, but you need to know this now. Everybody else, you should be utilizing this. California English Language Development relates to teaching language to people who do not speak English as a first language and non-academic English speakers. Then you have technology standards, which for the time being, we are not going to address. And then you have your Common Core standards. So here you have Common Core for English language arts. And I'm going to...
I have a question.
Yes.
When you said that the California English Language Standards is under the language development standards, when you're doing a lesson, say for your class...
Wait. No, California English Language Standards are not in California English Language Development Standards. They are two separate sets of standards.
Okay, so when I'm doing a lesson, and I'm doing a lesson for a class, but I do have English, what do I put as my standard here? Do I do one from the Common Core and one from the other?
Yep. That's what I'm getting ready to show you.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's okay. That's a very legitimate question, but I'm getting ready to show you how to do that. So I'm going to pick third grade. Why not? So now you see you are offered all of these standards, but you're not going to be doing all these standards. You have reading standards for literature, standards for informational text, standards for foundational skills, writing standards, speaking and listening standards, and language standards. You're going like, oh my God, what the heck am I supposed to be teaching? So I'm going to go into standards for informational text. And that because it relates to social science and I can relate to that. So here, because expository text is actually the thrust of the Common Core era of standardization in our classrooms, I'm going to look at key ideas and details. I know that they're going to be reading something that is an informational text, and I am going to ask them to find key ideas and details. So here it says, I can ask and answer questions. This is what the students should be able to do. Ask and answer questions to demonstrate understanding of the text, referring explicitly to the text as the basis for an answer, or they could be determining the main idea after they read a text and recount those details and explain how they support the main idea, or they could describe the relationship between a series of historical events, scientific ideas or concepts, or steps in a technical procedure in a text, using language that pertains to time sequence and cause and effect. Well, I know that my students are going to be reading about the community. They're going to read something about people in their community. And so I have decided that in this particular instance, we are going to have a class discussion. So I'm going to be asking questions and they are going to create some questions that will demonstrate understanding of what they read in the text. So I'm only going to pick this one standard. I'm not going to pick all three standards because a lesson does not have to be an hour long. A lesson is a chunk of information that you are able to assess mastery before you move on to the next piece of information. It's a series of learning opportunities that are all strung together. So for someone in the third grade, I'm looking basically at maybe a 10 to 12 minute lesson on the outside, where before I have them do something and then move over to the next part of the sequence of lessons. So I'm only going to focus in on this one standard at this time. So I've chosen that standard and I click choose standard and it says that's the one that I've picked. And then I'm going to add the standard to the lesson or the unit. And you see the standard is here. If I decide I don't like that standard, it's the wrong one, then I remove it. So now I need to go back though. I am not through. I now go back to add standard. And in this case, I am going to add the English Language Development Standard. Now, what you have to do before you actually, oh, I can't move it. Doesn't want to move. Before you choose here, you have to see, what is this asking? And this is saying that the students are going to be able to ask and answer questions to demonstrate understanding. That means that if they're going to ask and answer, something's going to be verbal. They're going to talk. And if they're going to answer questions, they're going to listen. And if they're going to be using an informational text to do that, it means they're going to read. Does this say that they're going to write anything? No, it doesn't. You might have them write something, and it's good to have them write something, but in this particular case, with this particular standard, for this particular lesson, the students are going to be reading, listening, and speaking. So now I come over to my English Language Development Standards, and I open it up. I know that they're going to be listening and speaking, and I know they're going to be reading. If I decide to have them write something, I would pick writing. But let's just say that's not what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to have them ask and answer the questions. So for listening and speaking, I pick the grade level. Here's the span, grades 3 through 5. And then it says strategy application. I need to know, and for you as you're working with Cal State, you only have to pick one student. If May wants you to pick more than one, she will let you know. Usually I just have you focus in on one student for you to make the adaptations for this lesson. So let's say that we pick an early intermediate student. That means that this student's language is higher than beginning, but not intermediate. So in intermediate, if I know students are going to ask and answer questions, I could be asking them about comprehension. So let's see what it says. It says that they can begin to understand, begin to be understood when speaking. Okay, that's possible. It does say that there will be inconsistent use of English grammatical forms and sounds, such as plurals and tenses will not necessarily match. It says that they will ask and answer questions by using phrases or simple sentences. They will restate and execute multiple steps, oral directions. Based on this California state standard, ask and answer questions to demonstrate understanding of the text. This is the most appropriate English language standard for them, English language development standard for them. But and it tells me that not only are they going to do this, but they are also going to answer in a particular way. When they are early intermediate, they're only going to be using phrases and simple sentences. And some of those phrases and simple sentences may not have grammatical forms that are correct. So if you want, you can also do this, but to keep it simple in the beginning, just pick one. Any questions so far? All right, so I'm going to add this to the standard. So now, May, you can come in and talk to your students right now, but for my students, you should know when you write a lesson plan for me, if I do not see a minimum of 2 standards, your content standard and the English language development standard, I will automatically not read the rest of it because it's not correct. You are getting a certificate that verifies that you know how to teach English language development in the mainstream classroom, that you understand SDI and the SIOP model. If you are not learning how to do that when you create your lesson plans here, then you are not demonstrating competency in that. So for my students, you need to know that. If you just give me the California State Standard or a Common Core Standard, and I don't see this English Language Development Standard, then your lesson plan is automatically not going to be accepted. Does everybody who is Connie Davidson student understand that? Oops. Any questions? May, do you want to add anything? May? Yo, May. Let me see if I could get her. There you are. May, do you want to add anything?
No, that's fine. Fine.
All right, I just want to make sure. All right, let me mute you again. All right. All right, so now that you have these two standards, we're now going to move, the grade level is easy because you know you're doing third grade, so you can go ahead and click that. Now you have to get to the meat of what you are going to be teaching, and this is called the content objective. This content objective you have to write, and it has to be measurable. It must directly align to the California Content Standard. So here it says that the students are going to ask and answer questions to demonstrate understanding of a text. It also says that they're going to be referring explicitly to the text as the basis of their answers. So this means that the students are going to be able to do something that I can see that does this. You can frame this however you want, but I usually use the students will be able to. So this is what I want to see. And then what do I want to see? That given a text on something, given the text on who works in our community, the students will ask and answer questions referring to the students will accurately ask and answer questions referring to the text as to support their responses. Okay? It's not great, but it does say exactly what's going to happen. I know that the students are going to be given this text, and I know that the students are going to, you know what's not in here? What's not in here? They're going to read it. So after reading the text, on who works in our community, the students will accurately ask and answer questions referring to the text to support their responses. Does that relate closely to align to the standard? Any questions here? No questions? Okay.
In your content objective, do you need to say how many they will ask and answer?
No, that's going to be the assessment. If you want to say, the students will be able to accurately answer 10 questions about who is in our community, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that here. But that's actually, you are now going to use that as, in the assessment, you get very specific. So for the lesson, I'm saying this is what they're going to be able to do. In the assessment, I'm going to say, this is what mastery looks like when they do this thing I'm asking them to do. But if you want to add, they're going to ask and, they're going to answer 10 questions here, that's not going to hurt anything. Okay?
Yes.
All right. So that's the content standard. That only has to do with the English language arts. So I'm going to save that. And now I'm going to come down here to the language objective. And this is where people make a gigantic mistake. It says reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Well, we know they're going to be reading, we know they're going to be listening, and we know they're going to be speaking. What happens is candidates usually think that this is relating to how they're going to respond to you. I'm going to ask them some questions, and then they're going to read the text, and then they're going to do these things. That's not what this refers to. This language objective refers to the English language development standard. It does not relate to what the class in general is going to do and what you're going to do. Is anyone confused? Because this is huge, because this is where most people make the mistake, and they say, I'm going to ask them some questions and they're going to read the text. And I was like, that's really nice, but what are you doing for the English language development kid? That's what I want to know. So here, since you know that you're going to be doing reading, listening, and speaking, you now have to write the objective based on what the student should be able to do. So we do know that the student should be able to access the text. So maybe we're not making a modification for the text. Maybe we just say the students will be able to read the text. Okay, who works in our community. Or you could say after the student has done this, they will then, now how are they going to answer these questions? And how are they going to ask these questions? So you would say using simple phrases or sentences, the students will ask and answer questions about the text. Okay? Now, the reason you want to be explicit, number one, you're going into alignment, but number two, this also lets you know how you have to pose your questions to this one child who is learning English as a second language. You cannot ask the questions to this child in a complicated manner, because not only will they not be able to understand what you're saying, but they won't be able to process and give you what they understand. So what you want to do is you'll ask them questions in such a way that they can give you a short answer or a simple sentence. If you are expecting them to do more than that, then you are expecting this child to do something that they are not able to do at this point in their language development. This is a common mistake that teachers make, and they'll be in the classroom and they'll think that their teaching is just great and everybody should be able to get it, and the kids are sitting there and they know how to look engaged, but they're not responding well, and they're not really demonstrating to you what they know. It also helps you to understand when you get below and it talks about adaptations, what are the adaptations you're going to make for this child? These adaptations, these modifications are to help support language development. This is, before I leave this, I really want to make sure you guys really have this, because if you don't have this, you don't have a lesson plan, because you don't know where you're going. If you don't have a content objective or a language objective that is measurable, you do not have a lesson plan. You have a bunch of activities. Any questions? This is really huge.
Sorry, to go back to the standards, if I'm doing a science lesson, I would still put in my English language development standard for my EL learner. Is that right?
That is, you never write a lesson plan that does not have ELD.
Okay.
Ever. I don't care what your content is. PE, art, science, math, needlepoint, jumping up and down, standing on your head, getting tattoos. It doesn't make any difference. It always has an ELD.
Okay.
And that's because you're getting a certificate in ELD. Okay? Anybody else have any questions? All right, so now you've done that and you know all of this. Now I want you to jump down here. I don't want you to do anything else. I want you to jump down here and I want you to look at these 2 boxes on assessment. Get these 3 things lined up, the rest is easy. So the first is, what kind of assessment are you going to be using? Performance, traditional, formal, informal, summative, or formative. People always say, what's the difference between informal and formative? Well, I'm not exactly sure. What's the difference between formal and summative? Well, I'm not exactly sure. But I do want to say, for this one little lesson that you're giving at this point in time, just pick one. If you pick 3, I expect to see 3 separate assessments, because I'm going to be asking questions and answering questions, and asking the students to ask and answer questions. I'm probably going to be doing something along the formative assessment, because in this, they're going to be demonstrating in the asking and the answering how much they understand about the text. So I'm going to write formative, because I'm going to know before I move on to the next lesson if they're ready to go to the next lesson or the next part of the lesson. If I'm doing summative means, let me go back. Formative means, what are the students learning? Summative means, what have the students been taught? So when they take the big tests at the end of the term or at the end of the week, summative tells you what they've been taught. Formative tells you what they are learning. And in formative assessment, students are more willing to change their mind than in summative assessment. Summative assessment means it's over, I'm looking at what was taught, and I'm moving on. This is usually when you say they're going to take a test at the end of the week. I don't want to know about the end of the week. I want to know about the end of this lesson. Informal is a way for you to still find out what they're learning. You're walking around the classroom looking at stuff, but you're still going to be looking at particular markers to see if they're moving forward towards mastery. And formal, I'm just not really sure what that means. May, if you got an idea, please chime in, because I basically only walk around in these 2 realms, formative and summative. May, you got anything to add to that? Because I really don't. Wait a minute, hold on. Anything, do you have any wisdom on the formative and summative, informal or formal?
No, what you said is fine, because formative, as you're going along and they're forming their ideas and you're able to make some changes and assist them. Informal, of course, is going to be a variety of ways to assess a student. And then the formal is going to be that big test, and that can be kind of like a summative test and that kind of thing. That's how I see it anyway.
Okay. So just to be safe for yourself, whatever you pick, just pick one. Don't pick 2 or 3. Just pick one. As you move on in your profession, it'll become much more complicated and you'll be doing many things at one time. But right now, while you're in our program, we're teaching you the skill of lesson planning. So keep it simple. So we're going to say it's formative. Now I've got to write out, what is that going to look like? So, given, let me see, who was it that said that maybe we could tell them how many questions they were going to answer accurately? Okay, so this is going to be formative. Students will ask questions. So how many questions do we want them to ask? 5 questions, 2 questions, between 2 and 5 questions? What? So I'll say between 3 and 5 questions. Okay. So if the students are going to do this, are they going to be doing it in partners or in groups? You have to ask all these questions. This is how you're going to plan your lesson. So in groups of, in pairs, in groups of 3, what do we want to do? In groups of 3?
Yes, that's good.
In groups of 3. Students will ask 5 to 7 questions. Do we want about the text? Who works in our community? And are they just going to ask the questions, or are they also going to have responses to the questions? Or are they going to help their mates respond to the question?
Because this is the written response section.
But I didn't have them write anything.
Right.
So
we need to look.
If I'm going to have them do something in writing, what do I have to do? I've got to go back up to the top, and I've got to add a writing component to ELD.
Yes.
See, that's how you have to work this through, because you'll think you're doing something, but until you can actually describe what the assessment is going to look like, you may not have thought through the lesson well, because this forces you to think, what is this really going to look like? So why don't we say in groups of 3, students will develop, because we're just going to get them talking.
Can I ask a question?
Sure can.
So during this assessment, let's say it's a language, you had your lesson talking about the reading or whatever, the text. And so the description of the assessment, couldn't that just be how they developed their questions, or if the questions were related to the text at all? Does that make sense?
How do
I mean, does your
them?
assessment have to have, you're saying that it has to have writing, or you have to go back up? I'm just curious.
I am writing this now, so I don't have to have writing. I'm actually changing this assessment so it doesn't have a writing component.
Oh, so when you said develop 3 to 5 questions, that would entail writing.
No.
Therefore, you're going to change that.
I don't have to. I didn't say they were going to write it. They could just develop them in a group. They could speak them.
You have 3 students, right?
They could speak them. They could just develop and speak them to one another. They could develop 3 to 5 questions from this text and ask one another. Responses would have these things in it, and the responses would have evidence, of referring explicitly to the text in their answers.
Okay.
See, the thing is, if I decide I want to have them write something, I have to come back up here and I have to change this.
Right.
I have to change it. That's why you have to align your standard and your objective and your assessment before you do anything else. Because you think you're going to be doing something, and then as you think it through, what exactly is this assessment going to look like? You're going to go like, the students will write, oh God, I didn't say they were going to write. Now I got to go back up and write the writing part of that ELD and see what that's going to look like for those ELD. And then up here in the objective, if I said that after reading the text, the students will accurately ask and answer, I have to change this now that says the students will accurately create, write, ask, and answer. Because now I've added those components to this content objective. This is called alignment. So you teach what you want to teach instead of teaching apples when you think you're teaching oranges.
Right.
Okay, so does that help out?
Yeah, it does. I guess I was working on a lesson plan doing writing with first graders.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess I was just kind of thinking about my own assessment, and the way I filled it out was because it was going to be a formative assessment, basically walking around and making sure that they have all the components, the beginning, middle, and end, things like that. So with that assessment of me doing a formative assessment, walking around the classroom and help them in description, I mean, I described that how I thought it related to the objective, but I'm just curious if that would fall into the right I mean, if that would count as a correct assessment.
You would most likely write something that you would monitor student progress to have evidence of understanding these characteristics about a story, beginning, middle, and end. Because you have to write down what it is you are going to observe You can't write down what you think you're going to feel. You have to actually say, I'm going to see a student do this, or I'm going to hear a student say this, or I'm going to watch a student do this, demonstrate this. It's that explicit. And you get those words from Bloom's taxonomy. You get the things that I'm going to evaluate them doing this. The student is going to recall information about, but down here, you have to be explicit. What does mastery actually look like? It's not easy. It's hard.
No, it's hard.
It feels like when I'm doing these lesson plans, it feels like I'm repetitive a lot. I'm repeating a lot of things. Does it seem like it's repetitive?
Sure.
A little bit when you're going.
Because you're aligning. You're going to align your state standard, ask and answer questions, which is the demonstration of understanding, to the content objective, which is ask and answer questions, which is the demonstration of understanding, with the assessment, which is to ask and answer questions, which is the demonstration of understanding. But here you have to say measured by what? To what degree? That they will, and in this case, when they're asking and answer those questions, you are going to really talk about referring to the text as the basis of their answer.
Exactly.
You know, can they go back to the text and find supporting documentation for their answer? Now, you want to know why that's important? Because if you ask them questions and you say, do police work in our community? And they say, yes. That's nice. But did they refer explicitly to the text for the basis of that answer? No. So if that means if you want them to be able to do this as the demonstration of their ability to ask and answer questions for understanding, it means you have to teach them how to find this explicit stuff in the text, so they'll be able to then, when they read something on their own, know the skill to use the text to support their answer. So it's not just knowing the policeman works in our community. It's in this text, what is the evidence that the policeman works in our community? It's a completely different thing. One is just asking them questions and they're giving you back information. The other one is they're using the text to support their answer when they answered the question about the policeman working in our community. Two different things. Your teaching is going to be done completely differently. Because unless you teach them how to find the stuff in the text to support their answer and then to construct an answer that demonstrates that support, you're never going to teach the child how to do this standard.
That's right.
So you really have to understand here, what is it I'm teaching? Questions from the peanut gallery?
No.
No questions from anybody?
Not so far.
Okay, I'm going to give you, before I go back down to the assessment, I'm going to give you how to deconstruct these standards. The standards are in three parts. You have skill, content, and context. The skill is always the verb. This is the verb, asking and answering. The content is what? They're going to ask and answer questions. That's it.
Okay.
That's the skill. They're going to ask and answer questions all through their lives. So what you're teaching the students to do here is ask and answer questions. The context is that they're going to get it out of a textbook and they're going to refer to the text when they answer the questions. That's the context. Because you can ask and answer questions in history by referring to the color of somebody's uniform.
Right.
You can ask and answer questions about maps by reading the key. That's the context. So here, this is the skill, ask and answer. This is the content, questions. And this is the context. Demonstrates understanding of the text by referring to the text for the answers. When you know how to do that, you'll never have a problem deconstructing your standards to know what it is you're going to teach. You also do not have to teach a whole standard at any one time. You can just teach this part of the standard in this lesson. If it's the first time they've ever seen it, you can just teach this to ask and answer questions to demonstrate understanding from a text. You could teach this tomorrow, referring to the text to support their answers. It all depends on how you want to teach it. Does that help everybody?
Yes. Yes.
I really need to hear from everybody. Take your mute off. I really want to hear your voices.
Yes, it did help. So you were saying that you could do one day and one the other. Would you rewrite your lesson plan to include, like when you said the second part the second day, would you write another lesson plan for that?
Yes, absolutely. Because on that second day, you're going to add this new element. So you're going to review what they already know, and then you're going to add the new piece on the next day. So
Right.
even for this, let's say that you have a 30-minute block to work with the kids. So for the first 10 minutes, you're teaching them just how to ask and answer questions. And then you have them practice to make sure they get it. And let's say you have a wonderful class and everybody got it. It's like, cool, I can move on to the next thing. Then the next day, then for the next half of the lesson, you teach them how to do that in the context of finding their response, the support documentation in the text itself. Those are two lessons that you then worked in a 30-minute period.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody? Okay, so let's finish crafting this because this is important. And you all help me craft it because I'm going on brain freeze here. Okay, in groups of three, students will develop 3 to 5 questions from the text on who works in our community. Or come on, help me. We can't get this unless you guys help me.
Okay, come on. What do we want to add?
What do we want to add?
And answer them.
Students will practice asking questions and answering them about the text.
Okay, let's go back up here. What are they going to do?
They're going to be practicing answering and asking questions about the text.
No, that's not what they're going to do. What did I say they were going to do? What does it say?
They were accurately going to ask and answer questions referring to the text.
For what?
To support their responses.
There you go. You've got to put that down there because that's what you said they were going to do. Okay. So let me just, okay. In groups of 3, students will develop 3 to 5 questions about the text, blah, blah, blah. And the students will accurately ask and answer the questions, referring to the text to support their responses. Now you know exactly what the kids are going to do. To ask and answer the text is not sufficient. That is not what you said you were going to teach. And I'll let you know right now, those of you who are in a term, all of you are going to take TPAs before this thing is all over with. If you write a standard that says one thing, and then your lesson has them doing something else, you're not going to pass your teacher performance assessments. Because those things get scrutinized. What you say you're going to teach, we're going to look at the evidence of that teaching in the document itself. But even more, we want the kids to learn, and we don't want you to teach something that you think you're teaching and you're not. Okay, go ahead. Somebody had a question.
Yeah, I have a question. So I see the way that we want to make sure that we're aligning the different standards and aligning them to the assessment. And so I see how we keep coming back to making sure we say all 3 of those things, right? Ask, answer, refer to the text.
Mm-hmm.
And we think more specifically about exactly what that's going to look like in the classroom. And I'm thinking about what are the logistics of how I want these students to engage around this. And I'm going to train them
we're coming to that.
the text. So none of that goes here in the assessment. Nothing that's explicit about, I want to see them underline it in the text.
No. If that's what you want. So, but that's going to change this.
Mm-hmm.
That changes this. This in groups of 3, students will develop the 3 questions and will underline the supporting documentation in the text. It's a different question. It's a different learning assessment.
So then could would you recommend then, I mean, if I think about assessment, if I think about how focused and measurable I can make these things, I mean, would you say that generally keep these portions of this, the content, the objectives and the assessment a little more broad so that
there's nothing broad about this. I can walk around the room and see if they develop 3 to 5 questions. I can hear them ask those questions and answer those questions, and I can hear them use the text to support their response. There's nothing broad about that at all. It is explicit based on the standard that said they would ask and answer questions. If I want them to underline the text as a demonstration of their understanding, I would just write that in here. I would just, but the thing is that's the whole point of this is that if I want them to underline the references in the text, that now tells me when I teach this to the kid, I have to teach them how to underline the references in the text. I can't say, okay, kids, do this, and now make sure you underline the text, and I never taught them how to do that. This makes it so you teach everything the kids are supposed to know. You verify they know what they're supposed to know so that they can be successful in this mastery. You can make this as complicated as you want, but you just have to make sure that you teach them all the skills necessary to demonstrate mastery, because all this does is demonstrate mastery.
Okay.
That's it.
Yes.
That's it. Once we've done that, the worst part's out of the way. All this other stuff now is how you're going to teach the lesson. Here, everybody should have done this by now, I think, which is the information about your classroom itself. You cannot teach whom you do not know. So the first time you write this class information, it should go on for like a year and a half. This is who I have in my class. I got these ELDs and these CELT scores and this kid with a behavior problem and these kind of IEPs. And this is the community that I'm in, and the parent involvement is XYZ. And I have a kid that even though they don't have an IEP, he never seems to stay sitting down. Then I have chatty and they're chatty. And then developmentally, they're like this, and yada, yada, yada. Because this demonstrates that you know whom you are teaching. You only have to do that one time. And then for each subsequent lesson plan with this class, you cut and paste it.
Exactly.
All right, you've got to have that down there, because there's one assessment you'll take that's only about knowing who you're teaching. So you fill this out and then you're good to go. Considerations. Based on some of the stuff that you wrote up here, there are going to be considerations. Okay, so you have an English language learner and you got special needs, and you have a kid with academic language issues, and you got 2 504s and 1 IEP and 4 gifted and 2 behaviorals and 1 with cultural considerations. Every time you check one of these boxes, I expect to see a response to the anticipated difficulties with these considerations. So what I'm trying to say is, don't check too many boxes. You will always check EL, because you are always going to modify for an English language learner, whether you actually have one in your class or not. If you don't have one, make one up. Because you have to demonstrate you know what to do. But let's also say that you have a kid that's a behavioral problem, because you're going to be working in groups. So we got a behavioral. So just say that one. All right. So now I know that there are going to be 2 adaptations, two anticipated difficulties you are going to have with this. You got to write down what they are.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to say, with this EL student, my anticipated difficulty is this student is going is language is at an early intermediate, and I know that she's going to have difficulty formulating her responses. And the behavioral issue is little Jackie likes to get up and walk around the room all the time, so I'm going to have to find a way to keep him in his seat long enough to work with his group. You just write down what you're going to do. Those are the things that you're going to have to anticipate. How am I going to get her to talk, and how am I going to get him to sit down? I'm anticipating those two problems. Okay, so we know that we are going to be teaching Sadai because you have an English language learner. Whether you have one or not, you will always teach Sadai. Is there anything else down here that you might have as an adaptation? Well, maybe you know that the little behavioral kid loves to work on the computer, and if you can give him stuff on the computer, you can use technology. It's whatever you decide to do. Preferred seating, oral assessment, I don't really care what it is. But you will always check Sadai. But you can't just check it and not say what you're going to do. This is where you go back up here. What is this little girl's issue? She can ask and answer questions, but she's going to use phrases and simple sentences. Given that, to help her, you might say, for my EL student, I will give sentence frames to help her formulate her responses. Mm-hmm. And then you could say blank, works in our community because blank. Or whatever it happens to be. Or you could say, I'm going to let her have vocabularies that she can refer to. Or I'm going to put her with a partner who is going to make her comfortable so she will feel confident to speak out. Whatever you want to say, but you have to show an adaptation here. This is commonly not filled in. If it's not filled in, you have not completed the lesson plan.
It's not finished. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now you've done that. 21st century skills. Well, the kids are going to be working in groups to collaborate, communicate, think critically, I hope so, and to be creative. That isn't always going to be the case, but in this particular case, because they are going to be doing that, you could check all of them. We've already talked about what the assessment, what the learning is going to look like, and now you get into the procedures. Okay. So what kind of instruction is this going to be? Direct, inquiry, concept attainment? What is this going to be? So for this lesson, if they're going to ask and answer questions from the text, if you're showing them how to do this for the first time, it could be direct instruction. If they are working on this for several days and you are going to give them a text, and they're going to then do it, it could be cooperative learning. It could be collaborative learning because they already know these skills. Okay, but we're going to say that they're getting this for the first day. So we're going to do direct instruction. Materials you are going to need. You got to write down all the materials you're going to need. You're going to need the text. You're going to need, text. Oh, I hate this. Why is it doing that? There we go. You're going to need pencils, paper, whatever it is you're going to need. If you're going to be using an overhead projector, your LCD projector, if you're going to be using markers, what this does is it makes you get all of your supplies together so you will be prepared. And you're not going to be running around the classroom trying to figure out, oh, where did I put this? What did I do this? This makes you think ahead. In the real world, you won't write this down. You'll never do this again once you leave this program. But while you're in a preparation program, everybody makes you do this. And this form is actually a lot easier than other prep programs. So you just write down whatever it is they're going to be using. And here is where you narrate the actual lesson like you're writing a screenplay. Don't just say, I'm going to tell the kids they're going to do this. The kids are going to be put into groups and then they're going to do that. And the close is, I'm going to collect their work. No, that is not going to fly. This is, I'm going to call the kids to the carpet. They're going to sit down and crisscross applesauce. Then I'm going to say to the children, have you ever flown a kite? And they're going to answer. And I want them to think about this because I'm getting them ready to do something else. And then I'm going to talk about people in our community. And I'm going to say, do you know any people in our community? And I'm going to put that on the board. And then we're going to generate this. And that's just the open. Then you're going to move to the body of the lesson. And you're going to narrate that. And your close of the lesson relates to something that the students can demonstrate that they're walking away today at the close of this lesson with something that you taught them. They're all different kinds of closes. Close could be they have to talk to their partner about the most important thing that they learned in the lesson today. The close could be you're going to popcorn asking them, all right, give me a reference, show me a text, do something or other. May, you were going to say something.
No, I was going to say that you tie it to what you started with when you introduced the lesson, and tie your closing into that.
And that's always nice. So what did we learn? How does this relate to flying a kite? People in our community, whatever it happens to be. Yeah. Then down here is where you write your reflection on how did the lesson go? Did they learn what I wanted them to learn? Were there any aha moments? Is there anything about this I would change the next time I did it? Did I actually provide enough time for it? Did I think they knew something and I assumed it and then I found out they didn't know it? Or they knew more than I thought and so I actually finished the lesson sooner and I didn't have enough time and I didn't have something to fill it with. All this is asking you to look at your practice. Just look at your practice. Is there some way you could make this better the next time you do it?
I have a question.
Yes.
I like distinctly heard what you wanted for the open and then like distinctly heard what you wanted from the close. I don't know if I just missed what you said, the body.
I didn't because
Okay.
The reason I didn't do the body is the open is getting them ready. The body relates to how you're going to measure the stuff. So the body means the students are going to read the text, learn how to formulate questions, learn how to ask these questions, how to answer these questions, and how to refine referring material in the text. Those are all those skills. All those skills are going to be wrapped up in this lesson. And how I sequence that out here will be up to you. So now I'm going to show you examples. Does that answer your question? So this is the same kind of narration. So then I write on the board, or I put on the overhead projector, or I show them this video, and these are the follow-up questions that I have for the video. Whatever it happens to be, this is the teaching of the lesson to get them to do this.
Okay, got it.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Are you guys feeling overwhelmed? I'm looking at Chad. Chad's like, no, I'm cool. I got this.
I do have one question. Is this everything you did tonight, is it being taped so that we can refer back to it if we do run into questions during our next lesson plan?
Yes. And I will be sending to you, May, to your students, you sent them the LiveBinder file, access?
I have it, but I will send it again. Because I sent it at the beginning. Yes.
There's a LiveBinder resource that I have online in the cloud. And there's all kinds of stuff up here. But here it's called Lesson Planning 101. And in Lesson Planning 101, I have videos of this.
Mm-hmm.
And this is under Live Binder?
It's in the live binder.
Binder.
Dr. David.
And you have the,
So you can see.
Walk you through filling out the lesson plan assistance and the lesson plan observation event.
Okay, so they're there. If you, this is going to be put up, and you'll all get the link to this, but these are broken up because you guys have been on the phone with me now for an hour and 10 minutes, and I didn't want to make these things an hour and 10 minutes long. So there are 3 of them. All right. Then there's writing an objective using Common Core. There's, and I think that's the one that I want you to see. Is that the one I want you to see? No, that's not it. Hold on. I don't care about that. Writing learning objectives. This site is the absolute bomb. This is a great site. It's called Birdseed. And what it does is it prompts you. They call it the differentiator because you can use this in your classroom. Once you've created your, oh God, what am I trying to say? My brain is frying. Once you've created your objective, and you can create a straight objective on here for your like ELD student or students with special needs, you can come in and use this to make differentiations for them, and it's really simple. So here you have, it has the thinking skill, which is the skill, the content, which we talked about, asking and answering questions, the resources that they might use. In that case, it would have been a textbook. The product that they're going to have, in this case, it was going to be questions that they're going to ask and answer. And then how are they going to do this? They're going to do it individually or in groups or whatever. So thinking skill, remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, or creating. These are Bloom's taxonomies. So let's say that they just, for the sake of, let's see, duplicate, repeat, state. The students are going to state, because I don't think there's an ask here. Okay. Okay, the students are going to state. What are they going to state? In the content, they're going to state, you can write your own, as a matter of fact. But I'm just going to say, they're going to state paradox, trends, rules, patterns, ethics.
What about essential details?
Actually, we're going to put this, because I don't like that. We're going to ask. Questions. Okay. Okay. And then we're going to say, because this is about the text. All right. So let's go. And they're going to be using what? A textbook to create what kind of product? Oral debate lesson, plays, talk shows. They're not going to do any of those. Remember, these are Common Core type things. So they're just going to, using the textbook, students will ask and answer questions about the textbook, use the text, using a textbook, and create questions in groups of 3. Okay. Students will ask questions about the text using a textbooks and create questions in groups of 3. You can go ahead and modify this so it's exactly what you want. One of the reasons these are large is because in Common Core, they would never do this out of context. They would be doing this embedded in a larger unit. But for this lesson in this larger unit, this is all you want them to do.
I'm not understanding what the point of this, what you're trying to show us here. I guess I'm confused.
You can use it to help you create a learning objective. As you go through this tool,
okay.
It's like a drag and drop for learning objectives, for creating learning objectives, or for differentiating your learning objectives. And it's I like it. Some of my students use it a lot. because they don't want them to just do something that is small. They want them to do something that's larger. And because it's more Common Core-esque. Because Common Core says the kids aren't learning these skills out of context. So that asking and answering questions in the context of that textbook about the community could be in a larger piece related to them getting ready to create a magazine or an illustrated book about members in their community. And they're using this particular skill at this particular time to glean information that they will use later when they do the illustrated book.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. So,
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
okay, so then there's all kinds of other stuff here, but I want you to know, you see where it says direct instruction template, inquiry lesson template, unguided inquiry templates. These are templates that when you get down to the body of the, when you get into the body, the open, body, close, these templates prompt you on what to write. You can find these in the resources section of your Cal State Teach website. But it tells you, okay, if you're going to be doing an inquiry lesson, then it says write the discrepant event. So you just take this off, and then you would just text it. This is a PDF. You can get the ones that you can actually do stuff on on the website. But you would just take that off, and then you would write, I'm going to show them turtles and ask them to observe turtles in the water. That's your discrepant event. And then you're going to ask the students to do stuff, state the task. They're going to note what they see the turtles do. Then down here it says elicit questions that verify conditions and events of the discrepant event. So here you're going to say, let's talk about what we see these turtles do. How do they navigate? How do they interact with one another? How often do they come up for air? What did you notice about this or that? All I'm saying is these templates prompt you as you go through the lesson so that you're able to get a framework for the thinking. And they have one for direct instruction. They're all kinds. And then it tells you here how to go about stating the close. Here it says guides the students to formally state their explanations regarding their hypothesis that they had or were their discoveries. And it's just a way to help you understand the habit of mind you need in order to actually construct a lesson that does what you want it to do. Because most of the time when you're learning the lesson plan, you construct lessons that don't do what you want them to do. And then you wonder why the kids didn't get it.
But you have a template there that will help you. It tells you exactly what you have to do.
It tells you exactly what you have to do. And there's other things that are here. You're free to navigate this site for all kinds of stuff. I put all kinds of junk in here. But this particular one will help you with your lesson planning for sure. Now, the final thing I want to go over, and then everybody can go home, including me. I'm home, but I really would like to have a glass of wine, and I don't want to do that in front of you all. Okay, so now I'm made my lesson plan, which is the new lesson. I'm going to come see you for an observation. You're going to go over here and click observation event. Then it says add the observation. That means the observation that I've just had, and you are going to send it to your faculty advisor. In this case, I only get the one advisor, so I'm going to send it to me. All right. So now, once I've done that, I'm going to add that, and I will get this page. These are the teacher performance expectations that we measure your teaching behaviors and characteristics against. This is how we evaluate your work. We will always look at social environment, whether you click it or not. But as a new teacher, we always want you to click social environment to start out with. This is a rubric. This is where are you as it is to creating a social environment. Are you just exploring stuff? Are you actually applying things most of the time? Are you very proficient in your expectations in the classroom? Are you exemplary? That means, could I use you in the dictionary and say, go see Debbie because she's perfect at this? If you're not sure, of what these characteristics are, you click here and it'll tell you what they are. You then select the one you want. If you're going to say this and put nothing down here, I'm going to measure you against all of these. I don't think you want that in the beginning. I think you want to be a little more laser-like.
Yeah.
So let's say help students work responsibly with others and independently. So because they're going to be doing group work, I decide I want that one. So I'm now going to paste that right there. Okay. And then I'm going to decide that I'm applying. I'm just learning how to do that. So when I click that, there'll be a check mark there. So now I can hide the benchmarks and I can close that up. So when I, as the faculty member, come in and I look at your observation plan, I'm going to see that check mark. If you also want to, if you're brand new in the program, you haven't even had ELD. You know what to do with it, but for us to measure you on it right now, if you haven't done the readings and gone through it, that's premature. But so making content accessible, let's just say that you want to do something with that. You're making this lesson and you incorporate specific strategies and teaching instructional activities. So I'm just going to say that's what I'm looking at. I'm putting that here. I'm going to hide these benchmarks. And here I'm exploring because I'm just experimenting. I'm really not sure how well I'm doing this. Okay, so then it goes like that. This is the entire lesson that you have put into, that now has connected to your faculty advisor. When I can't do it on this one because I sent it to myself, so I will show you one. Let me just go into observation events. So now I open this observation event because I'm about to evaluate you. I check and see, the first thing is, you see the checks have an S? That means that the student has submitted those check marks. I open it up to see where does the student think she is. All right? So now I know, and as you can see, she wrote down here what it is that I'm going to be looking at. The lesson shows me the content objective, and the lesson shows me the language objectives. Then I get the open, body, and close of the lesson. If I want to see the rest of the lesson, I view the lesson and I can see everything else. This has to be completed, at least if you're just starting, the content, the standard, the objective, and the assessment. We don't expect you to be perfect if you're just starting, but you've got to start filling these out so that we can help you through and help you with those habits of mind. So once I've done that, close this. Then as I am watching you, depending on your faculty member, they will either write in these boxes or I tend to write here because it's easier. I can't write in the boxes. I can't be jumping around in boxes. I write here, but May write around in the boxes. I don't know. That's what she'll do. She does what she does. I do what I do. And sometimes if we're just coming in to see you, we may not even use this form. We may use another form. But when you're doing a formal observation, you are expected to do this. So then when I look at this and I see what she's done, if I think she's done this well, I click that and you see now there are two there. That means I saw it and she saw it. We have both signed off on it. Then I can make it visible to the student or I can finalize it. That's how that works. Any questions?
Yeah, just real quickly, is there a place that we can access one or two examples of these fully fleshed out lesson plans using this format?
Use on my you go back to the live binder.
There's some full examples in there.
There's some examples in here. You will also find examples in, let me see, hold on, where do I write that? Lesson plan, identify that, blah, blah, blah. ELD, those are the screencast YouTubes. Hold on. There are examples embedded in here. Off the top of my head, I can't remember where they are. But I will make sure that you have examples. They're in some of the modules as well. And the curriculum.
Right.
Okay, the best thing to do is give it a go. No one is
Yes.
expecting you to be perfect. That's why you're learning to teach. But unless you fill these out, we can't help you to develop the mindset that you need to have. All right? I know you all want to know. Any questions? No, I'm very, I understand that. We've been on a long time. And I know that everyone would really like to, go to bed, get a drink, go to the bathroom. But I just want to make sure that, everybody understands.
Yeah, you were a lot of help. Thank you. But is it possible? I sent you a little note, MA. If you could give us the link to the live binder, is that so we have access to that? Okay.
Yes, I'll get that to you because I did earlier, but I think it's time to renew it and review it, especially Lesson Planning 101. That's the one you want.
Yeah.
And also, if when you're in the Lesson Planning 101, if there's something that's not there that you think would be helpful, if you'd let May know or me know, I'll create something and put it up there so that it'll become helpful, because I have to base it on what students have told me in the past, and you guys may need something different from me. And I have no problems making the videos or walking through something or making whatever you want. I'll be more than happy to make that available to you, but I just need to know what would be helpful for you.
Okay.
Okay?
Any questions?
Are we good to
Any
go?
problem?
Yeah, that was really helpful. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So if there's no questions,
Connie.
everybody have a good evening.
No.
And I'm going to send May the link to the recording once it's made, and she'll send that out to you as well.
Thank you.
Right.
All right. Thank you, May.
Well,
Bye-bye, Rebecca.
you guys.
Bye.
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 Bye.